The jar was empty. Not knocked over, not spilled. Empty. Wiped clean. It sat exactly where Noah had left it on his dresser that morning. $240. Gone. Like it had never existed at all. "Count it again, baby," I said, though I already knew. I'd watched his small fingers move over those bills 3 times that afternoon, his lips moving silently, so proud of the number he'd reached. Grandma's 50, Uncle Pete's 20, the crumpled 100 from his father. That one had felt, at the time, like the first real thing Robert had given him in months. Noah's chin trembled. "It was right here, Mommy. I put it right here." I knelt down on the carpet of his bedroom, in the house I'd fought so hard to keep. I made my voice as steady as I could make it. "I believe you. We're going to figure this out." But I already had a very bad feeling about where that money had gone. Robert had picked Noah up from his birthday party at 4 that afternoon for their scheduled visitation. 3 hours later, Noah came home, clutching his empty jar, refusing to say why he wouldn't look me in the eye, refusing to say why he'd cried the entire ride home. My neighbor had watched them pull away. She said he cried the whole time. I called Robert at 9 o'clock that night, after I'd finally gotten Noah to sleep, his cheeks still damp on the pillow. "His birthday money is missing," I said. $240. Was he with you the whole time? There was a pause on the line, the kind of pause I recognized from 3 years of marriage, the pause right before a lie got dressed up as a reasonable explanation. "He doesn't need that much cash lying around anyway," Robert said. "I put it somewhere safe. I'll talk to you about it later." "Robert, that money isn't yours to put somewhere safe. It's for his college fund. I'm being responsible, Jess, something you used to appreciate about me." He hung up before I could answer. I sat in my kitchen for a long time after that, phone still in my hand, staring at the refrigerator, Noah's kindergarten drawings held up with little Texas star magnets. I thought about the calm, reasonable tone Robert had used, the same tone he'd used 2 years ago when he told the judge he simply forgot to disclose a savings account, the same tone he'd used about the missed child support payments. He called them administrative delays. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I made myself a cup of tea. I sat very still, and I thought. Because there was something Robert didn't know, something none of them knew. 2 days earlier, my father-in-law, my former father-in-law, though he'd never once let me stop calling him that, Colonel James Whitfield Morgan, United States Army, retired. 18 months of retirement behind him after 31 years of service. He'd shown up unannounced at Noah's birthday party, carrying a wrapped gift and an apology he didn't owe me. "I know things ended badly between you and Robert," he'd said on my porch, hat in his weathered hands. "I want you to know that doesn't change how I feel about that boy in there, or about you, Jessica. You held this family together longer than my son deserved." I hadn't seen James in over a year. Robert had made sure of that. Some quiet campaign of excuses and scheduling conflicts. I'd been too tired to fight it. But James had found out about the party through his sister. He'd driven 4 hours from San Antonio just to be there. He'd stayed the whole afternoon. He'd watched Noah blow out 5 candles. He'd watched Noah count his birthday money on the porch steps, glowing with 5-year-old pride. And when Robert arrived to collect Noah for visitation, James had stayed exactly 10 more minutes than anyone expected, standing quietly by his truck in the driveway, watching his son's face as Robert leaned into the back seat of his car and said something to Noah that made the boy go very, very still. James hadn't told me what he saw, not that night. He'd simply said, before he left, "Jessica, call me tomorrow. There's something we should talk about." I hadn't called yet. I'd been too consumed with birthday cleanup, with work deadlines, with the exhausting choreography of single motherhood. Now, sitting in my kitchen with my son's tear-streaked pillow still fresh in my memory, I understood. James hadn't wanted to talk about reconciliation. He'd wanted to talk about what he saw. I picked up my phone and called him. It was nearly 10 at night, but he answered on the second ring, like he'd been waiting. "Jessica?" His voice was steady, but there was something underneath it, an edge I recognized from every story Robert had ever told me about his father's command presence. "Is Noah all right?" "His birthday money is missing. Robert took it. He says it's for a college fund, but..." "James, what did you see on Saturday? You said there was something we should talk about." The silence on the line lasted 3 full seconds. "I was hoping you'd call before I had to bring it up myself," James said quietly. "Jessica, I saw Robert take that jar of money out of Noah's backpack while his son was still in the yard, saying goodbye to his cousins. I saw him count it in the front seat of his car, and I heard what my grandson told him when Noah asked him for it back." My stomach dropped. "What did he say?" "He told him that little boys who cry about money don't deserve to have any." I closed my eyes. Somewhere down the hallway, my son was sleeping, dried tears on his face, believing at 5 years old that wanting what belonged to him made him weak or greedy or wrong. "There's something else," James said. His voice changed. It dropped into something harder. "Something you don't know yet, Jessica. Something about where that money is probably headed. I think it's time you and I had a longer conversation, not on the phone. Tomorrow, if you can manage it. Bring whatever financial records you have from the divorce, all of them." "James, what aren't you telling me?" "I think my son has been lying to both of us for a long time," he said, "and I think it's bigger than $200. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, pulling up every financial document from the divorce I could find. Bank statements, the settlement agreement, the child support order. Everything looked the way it had 18 months ago when the judge finalized everything. Unremarkable, unglamorous, the paper trail of an ordinary divorce between an ordinary accountant and an ordinary insurance salesman. Except Robert had never been ordinary about money. Even during our marriage, there had been small inconsistencies. I'd noticed and dismissed them. A credit card statement that didn't quite match his explanation, a bonus from work that never seemed to show up in our joint account, a habit of paying for things in cash. It felt, in hindsight, less like frugality and more like avoidance. I'd let it go back then, because I was tired, because fighting Robert on anything took more energy than I had left after work and Noah and the slow unraveling of a marriage I'd tried too hard to save. But James's voice on the phone had planted something in me that wouldn't let me sleep. "I think my son has been lying to both of us for a long time." At 6 in the morning, dark circles under my eyes, 3 cups of coffee in my system, I made a decision. I called my office and told my assistant I'd be working from home. Then I called James back. "I'm ready," I said. "Tell me everything." James arrived at 11, driving the same silver truck he'd had for a decade, looking like he hadn't slept much better than I had. He sat at my kitchen table. Noah, delighted to see his grandfather again so soon, climbed into his lap for exactly 4 minutes before getting distracted by cartoons in the living room.
Once we were alone, James pulled a manila folder from his jacket. He set it on the table between us. "I want to preface this by saying I'm not proud of what I'm about to tell you," he said. "I should have said something sooner, but Robert is my son, and for a long time I told myself his mistakes were his business, not mine to interfere with." "What's in the folder, James?" He opened it slowly. Inside were printed emails, bank statements, and what looked like a formal letter with a law firm's letterhead. "About 2 years ago, right before your divorce was finalized, Robert asked me for a loan, $15,000. He said it was for legal fees, that the divorce was more expensive than he'd budgeted for. I gave it to him. I didn't ask many questions. That's not how my son and I have ever talked to each other." I felt my jaw tighten. $15,000? "I found out 6 months ago that wasn't what it was for," James continued. "I found out because I do my own taxes every year. I keep records of every loan I make to family, in case it ever becomes relevant for gift tax purposes. This year, when I was organizing my files, I noticed the timeline didn't match up. Robert asked me for that money 3 weeks before he filed the initial paperwork for your divorce, not after." My mind, trained by 15 years of forensic accounting instincts, immediately began running the numbers. So he already had money set aside. He didn't need a loan for legal fees. That's what I started to suspect, so I made some calls. James slid a document across the table. "I have a friend from my Army days. He does private financial investigation work now, background checks, asset searches, that sort of thing. I asked him to look into something for me. Quietly, I paid him myself." I picked up the document. It was an asset search report, dated 3 weeks earlier, with James's name listed as the client. What I read made my hands go cold. Robert had an account that had never been disclosed during our divorce proceedings, an account opened 4 months before he filed for divorce, under a name that wasn't quite his own, Robert J. Morgan Holdings, a limited liability company registered in Nevada with Robert as the sole listed member. Current balance, $63,400. "James," I said quietly, "this is a real problem. This account should have been disclosed as marital property during the divorce. If he hid this deliberately—" "There's more," James said. Something in his voice made me look up. "The deposits into that account. My friend was able to trace some of them. Jessica, there are cash deposits going back years, small amounts mostly, a few $100s here, a few $100s there, deposited every month or two, going back at least 3 years." I stared at the numbers on the page in front of me, my accountant's brain doing the math automatically. And then I understood exactly what I was looking at. "He's been skimming," I whispered. "Small amounts, consistent, hard to notice if you're not looking for the pattern." "That's what it looks like to me," James said. "But skimming from what account? We had joint accounts during the marriage, but I balanced those every month. I would have noticed." James's face tightened. I could see him steeling himself for what he was about to say next. "Jessica, I don't think it was your joint accounts he was skimming from," he said quietly. "I think you need to look at the child support payments."
The kitchen went very quiet. "The order requires Robert to pay $800 a month," I said slowly. "He's paid it every month, sometimes late, but he's paid it. Has he? Or has he paid you a portion of it and diverted the rest somewhere else, banking on the fact that you're a single working mother too exhausted to audit every dollar against the court order?" I felt something cold settle into my chest. Not shock exactly, the sick recognition of a pattern I should have caught sooner. I pulled out my own laptop. I opened my banking app, cross-referencing 18 months of deposits against the court-ordered amount. It took me 11 minutes to find the first discrepancy. March, 14 months ago, $700 deposited instead of $800, with a memo line reading, "Partial, we'll make it up next month."
He never made it up. I found 6 more instances over the following hour, each one small enough to dismiss individually, $50 here, $100 there, always with some plausible excuse attached, a late fee from his bank, an unexpected car repair, a temporary cash flow issue that would be corrected next time. Individually, they looked like the ordinary friction of an amicable but imperfect co-parenting arrangement. Together, they added up to over $4,000, quietly, deliberately withheld from his son over the course of a year and a half. "He's been stealing from Noah," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Not just yesterday, for over a year." James nodded slowly. "And I think yesterday tells me something else. Taking that birthday money directly out of a 5-year-old's hands. I think my son has convinced himself he's entitled to whatever he wants from that child, because for 18 months, nobody has stopped him." I should have called a lawyer that afternoon. Instead, I made a different decision, one that surprised even me, given how carefully I'd built my life around caution and preparation since the divorce. I called Robert and asked him to meet me for coffee. "I want to talk about a college fund for Noah," I told him, keeping my voice light, deliberately vague. "I think we should set something up properly, formally." Robert, who had spent our entire marriage believing himself smarter than everyone in every room he entered, agreed immediately, clearly delighted at the prospect of appearing responsible. We met at a coffee shop near downtown Dallas 2 days later. I arrived early. I chose a table near the window, my laptop bag beside me, containing printed copies of everything James's investigator had found. Robert arrived exactly on time, wearing the confident half smile I remembered from the best and worst days of our marriage. "I'm glad you called," he said, settling into the chair across from me. "I was hoping we could start being more reasonable with each other, for Noah's sake." "I agree completely, which is why I want to talk about the account." Something flickered behind his eyes, so brief I might have missed it, if I hadn't spent 15 years reading financial statements for exactly this kind of tell. "What account?" "Robert J. Morgan Holdings, the limited liability company in Nevada, $63,000, give or take." The color left his face slowly, like watching a photograph fade in sunlight. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, but his voice had lost its earlier ease. "I have documentation," I said quietly, sliding a single page across the table. "Not everything, just enough. Account opening date, current balance, a pattern of cash deposits that started 3 years ago and never stopped. I also have 18 months of bank records showing shortfalls in your child support payments, totaling just over $4,000, all deposited into personal accounts around the same time your LLC balance increased." He didn't touch the paper. He stared at it like it might catch fire. "This is a mistake," he said. "You're misunderstanding something. That account, that's not what it looks like." "Then explain it to me." "I don't have to explain anything to you, Jessica. We're divorced. My finances are my business. Undisclosed marital assets before our divorce was finalized aren't your business alone, Robert. You know that. You signed a settlement agreement swearing under penalty of perjury that you'd disclosed all your assets." I kept my voice level, professional, the same tone I used with difficult clients at work. "And diverting court-ordered child support into a private account isn't just a civil matter. That's a pattern a family court judge is going to take very seriously." "You wouldn't." His confidence was cracking now, replaced with something sharper, more desperate. "You'd drag this into court? Over what? A few $100s here and there? You'd humiliate me over pocket change." "It's not pocket change to Noah," I said. "He counted his birthday money 3 times, Robert. He was so proud of it, and you took it out of his hands and told him he didn't deserve to have it, that he was wrong for wanting what belonged to him." For a moment, just a moment, something like shame crossed his face. Then it hardened back into defensiveness. I was trying to teach him something about financial responsibility. You were trying to take what wasn't yours, the same way you've been taking from him for 18 months. I'm not interested in punishing you, Robert. I'm interested in making sure my son never has to wonder again whether his father is going to steal from him and call it a lesson. Robert's jaw tightened. If you take this to court, I'll fight you. I'll say you're exaggerating. I'll say this is exactly the kind of vindictive behavior the judge saw during our divorce. You can try, I said, closing my laptop and standing. But you should know something else, Robert. Your father was at Noah's birthday party. He saw you take that money out of the backpack. He heard what you said to Noah in the car, and he's the one who found the Nevada account in the first place.
I watched something in Robert's face collapse. Not guilt, not yet, but the particular horror of a man realizing the audience for his worst behavior had just grown considerably larger than he'd planned for. My father wouldn't, he started, then stopped, because we both knew that wasn't true anymore. I'll be in touch through my attorney, I said, and I left him sitting there, coffee going cold, his confidence finally, visibly beginning to crack. The weeks that followed moved faster than I expected. I filed a motion with the family court to modify the existing child support order and request a formal accounting of the diverted funds. My attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Patricia Reyes, had handled my original divorce. She was disturbingly delighted by the quality of evidence I brought her. This is about as clean a paper trail as I've ever seen, she told me, flipping through James's investigator's report. The undisclosed LLC alone could reopen questions about the original settlement. Combined with the pattern of diverted support payments, we're not just talking about a modification hearing, we're talking about potential contempt of court, and depending on how aggressive we want to be, possible fraud. I don't want to destroy him, I said. I want him to stop. I want Noah to never doubt again that the people who are supposed to protect him actually will. Patricia nodded slowly. Then let's build a case that makes stopping his only reasonable option. Robert, predictably, did not go quietly. He hired an attorney of his own, an aggressive, expensive one, funded, I suspected, at least partially from the very account we were now formally investigating. His attorney's first move was to request mediation, framing the entire situation as a misunderstanding, something that could be resolved amicably without dragging the family through unnecessary litigation. I agreed to mediation, but only because Patricia assured me it would give us a formal, recorded opportunity to lay out our evidence without the delays of a full court docket. The mediation was held on a Tuesday afternoon in a conference room downtown. Robert arrived with his attorney, wearing a suit that looked more expensive than anything he'd owned during our marriage, paid for, I now understood, at least partially with money that should have gone toward diapers and daycare and birthday jars full of carefully counted bills. What Robert didn't expect was for his father to walk in 20 minutes into the session. I asked to be included as a witness, James said calmly, taking the seat Patricia had reserved for him. I have first-hand knowledge relevant to this matter, and I intend to provide it. Robert's face went through several emotions in rapid succession: shock, betrayal, and finally a kind of cornered desperation I'd never seen on him before. "Dad, you don't need to be here," he said quietly. "This is between me and Jessica." It stopped being just between you and Jessica the moment it involved my grandson, James said. I watched you take that money out of his hands, Robert. I heard what you told him, and when I found out afterwards that it wasn't the first time you'd taken something that belonged to that boy, I made a decision. I'm not going to sit quietly while you teach my grandson that the people who claim to love them can't be trusted. The room went silent. Robert's attorney, sensing the shift, tried to redirect the conversation towards settlement terms, but the tone had already changed irrevocably. James's testimony, calm, detailed, devastating in its specificity, laid out exactly what he'd witnessed at the birthday party, exactly what his investigator had found, exactly how long the pattern had continued. By the end of the 2-hour session, Robert's attorney was no longer arguing that nothing improper had occurred. He was negotiating damage control. My client is prepared to make Noah's college fund whole immediately. Full restitution of the diverted support payments, plus establishment of a formal education trust with independent oversight, in exchange for— "There's no exchange," Patricia said flatly. "This isn't a negotiation whether Robert stole from his son. It's a discussion of how he's going to make it right and what protections we're putting in place to ensure it never happens again." The final agreement, signed 3 weeks later, was more thorough than I'd initially imagined possible. Robert was required to pay full restitution, $4,000 in diverted support, plus a penalty amount determined by the court. The Nevada Limited Liability Company was dissolved. Its remaining funds, after Robert's legal fees, which had eaten through more of it than I expected, were placed into an irrevocable education trust for Noah, with James Whitefield Morgan named as independent trustee, alongside Patricia's firm. Robert would never again have unsupervised access to any funds intended for his son. But the consequences extended beyond finances. The court's contempt finding created a formal record, one that would follow Robert through any future custody modifications, any future disputes. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman named Judge Alvarez, had clearly seen every variation of parental deception in her courtroom. She made her position unambiguous during the final hearing. "Mr. Morgan," she said, looking directly at Robert across the courtroom, "children are not renewable resources you can quietly extract value from and expect no consequences. The court takes a very dim view of parents who treat their obligations as optional and their children's trust as expendable." Robert, for the first time since I'd known him, had nothing to say in his own defense. The changes in my life after that were quieter than I expected, but no less profound. Noah's college fund grew steadily under James's careful, transparent oversight. Monthly statements sent directly to me. No surprises, no hidden accounts. James began visiting more regularly, not out of guilt, though I suspected some of that lingered, but because he genuinely wanted to be present in his grandson's life in a way circumstances had previously prevented. Robert's relationship with Noah continued, supervised more closely now under the court's modified order, but something had fundamentally shifted. Noah was still cautious around his father for months afterwards, a 5-year-old's instinctive wariness. It took time and patience to soften.
I never pushed him to forgive faster than he was ready to. One evening, about 4 months after everything settled, I found Noah's birthday jar sitting on his dresser again, this time filled with money from his following Christmas, money he'd insisted on counting himself, 3 times the way he always did. "Nobody's going to take it this time, right, Mommy?" I knelt beside him, brushing his hair back from his forehead. "Nobody's going to take it, I promise." "How do you know?" I thought about James's steady voice on the phone that first terrible night, about the careful, patient work of building an unshakable case out of small inconsistencies most people would have missed, about learning, finally, that protecting the people I loved didn't require anger. It required attention, patience, and the willingness to notice what others hoped I wouldn't. "Because I'm always watching, baby," I said, "and so is your grandpa. You're never as alone as you think you are." Noah smiled, the first fully unguarded smile I'd seen from him in months. He went back to stacking his coins into careful, proud little towers. Outside, the Texas evening settled gold and warm across the yard, and for the first time in over a year, the house felt entirely, peacefully ours.